serious people who killed in self-defense. What's your story? Shared this before, but I was staying with my grandfather while my parents were out of state, and I woke up to a noise coming from upstairs and just knew it wasn't my grandfather. He has hearing damage from Vietnam and it didn't wake him up. But there was banging around and heavy footsteps. I was in the room with the gun cabinet, so I grabbed a shotgun and went to check it out. When I got to the top of the stairs, I just saw a guy in the living room going through stuff, so I pressed the safety and said he needed to leave. He turned around and saw my unthreatening, scared as asterisk 14-year-old self and told me to just go back downstairs and mind my business. So I repeated myself. He turned around and started walking towards me with something in his hand, so I fired. At this point my grandpa is very awake and comes out of his room and just tells me to look away and call the police. Thankfully, due to all the factors of him being a repeat offender, having a weapon, my age, and castle laws, it didn't go any further than the police coming and asking me questions. It messed me up for a while, and I still think about it often. But I got over it and realized that as unfortunate as it was, I didn't have a whole lot of options at that point. I wanted to comment on this to get it off my chest since I don't have opportunities to talk about this with my friends since I'm scared of what they will think. I was born in Honduras and from what I remember, it was a very deserted place. I spent most of my time with my walking to this girl's house who was around 16 years old. A couple other kids would come to her house since education was hardly accessible. She would teach us our shapes, animals, colors, etc. After class was over, I went home and I heard my aunt scream from the kitchen, "Ayuda, Ayuda." And then I remember that my uncle kept a gun hidden covered in rocks beside a old bathtub outside. He knew how dangerous it could be in this area, so he prepared me for everything. Went around the back and grabbed it as fast as I could. I went in and there stood a man with a knife threatening my aunt. I didn't really grasp what was happening, but I shot him without any second guesses like I was taught by my uncle. I honestly still don't believe I did something like that to this day, and I don't know what would have happened to my aunt if I didn't get there sooner. I still don't feel comfortable talking about this to my friends, but I just want to get it off my chest. Edit. Thank you guys so much for all the support, and thank you for the gold and platinum, kind stranger. Worked for an armed messenger service. Not even 10 AM, and as I was opening the door to the truck, I saw a huge guy in the mirror get out of a car and run towards me. He put me in a chokehold and started grabbing for my gun. He manhandled me like I weighed nothing. Would have easily gotten the gun if it wasn't a L3 holster. I managed to draw it, press it against him and started pulling the trigger before I blacked out. I have no idea what he would have done if he got the gun, and I'm not used to just being tossed around like that. He turned out to be blind drunk and played for a college football team this year. Did you stay in that job long after that? A few more years. I was there 5 years. There were 2 shootings in total during my time. It's not generally a dangerous job if you're on your guard. I've had multiple run-ins, but it was the only time I fired my weapon. I was 12, the oldest of 3 brothers. We were home alone while my parents were out on date night. At maybe 10 PM we hear a loud banging at the front door before a man broke the lock with his sheer body weight and momentum, monsieur. I told my brothers to hide in my room while I went to my parents' room for their shotgun. The whole time this guy is yelling about "where are my keys," and he starts coming upstairs when he heard me fumbling as I tried to load the shotgun. He flung the door to my parents' room open and I fell back with the gun shaking in my hands. I closed my eyes and pulled the trigger twice. The first one caught him in the legs and the recoil made the second shot catch his entire torso. The poor man had been drunk and lived a few houses down the way. But I didn't learn that until after. All I could focus on was how he was begging his mother not to let him die and that he was sorry he let her down as he slowly died on the floor just feet away from me. Sorry about this, man. I hope you don't carry the heaviness. I've shared this before. Not sure if it was accidental. But while in college in my first apartment, I came home from work at 3 a.m. monsieur. Some dude was in the hallway outside my door, and I had a bad feeling about it. I paused and went to get the mail, hoping he would leave. No. I come back and he's waiting at my door. I asked him what was up, and he said he was looking for John. My name is not John, and I lived alone. I asked him to move and let me in my door. He told me to asterisk off and get John. I slid between him and the door, opened it, and he pushed his way in. I pushed him out, he took a swing at me. I swung back, hitting him in the eye, which caused him to fall back and hit his head. Out cold forever. Apparently John was the guy who lived in the apartment before me. The dead guy spent 5 years in jail because of John ratting him out for drugs. Dead guy came to get some revenge. Got dead instead. It was accidental. You merely defended yourself, and he just happened to land wrong. You did not mean for him to die, therefore it's not your fault. It took police 90 days to figure that out. Despite video cameras in the hallway showing every second of the altercation. My wife and I were awakened in the middle of the night by someone banging on our sliding glass door on the porch. I turned on the outdoor lights and saw a shirtless man pacing back and forth, smacking the glass with his palms hard. As soon as he saw me in the light, he went berserk, smashing against the door even harder, trying to open the door or lift it off the tracks to get in. I shouted to him to calm down, calm down, calm down. He looked like someone you'd see in one of those exotic drug freakouts on YouTube. Unresponsive, zombie-like. All I could imagine was him coming in to smash us to bits. He seemed super strong and didn't know how the glass was withstanding his blows. My wife was on the phone with the cops while I was trying to mellow hi monsieur. He eventually gave up on the door and smashed his way out through the screen porch. I thought it was over but heard my wife shout, "He's coming around the side." I heard banging on the glass of our bedroom window. He was smacking hard against it until I heard crash and the glass was shattered. At that point I switched from pure fear into fear and anger. I was in the kitchen and scanned for a weapon. I grabbed the butcher knife from the top of the knife block, thinking, what the asterisk am I going to do with this? I couldn't mercy kill a rat in a trap, let alone stab someone. Maybe I'll just poke at him to scare him off. I ran into the bedroom. He had smashed another window and I could hear him trying to crawl through the blinds. I screamed at him to leave or I'd kill him, took a poke at him which was deflected somehow. Then fear and anger switched to pure fury. I plunged the blade into his chest with all my strength. I still can feel that thrust to this day. It was awful. That snapped him out of whatever state he was in. He screamed, "My chest!" and ran up. The cops found him a couple houses down the street, dead in a pool of blood. The first days after were just shock and disbelief. But family, friends, my counselor were all supportive. I half-assed went into work over the next week or so even though my boss said to take whatever time I needed. Time healed quicker than I thought it would. The man was not under the effects of drugs. He'd had a bad schizophrenic episode. He had fought with someone in a nearby group home, was locked in his room, then escaped through his window. Before the caregiver discovered the escape, he had tried to get into 2 other houses in the neighborhood before coming to mine. I wish I knew more about him and hope he is at peace. I think about him every day. I felt like I was spared and given another chance. I appreciate life's little gifts more now. It's somehow made me a better person, at least I hope. I hope he's better now, too. The closest my dad ever came to shooting someone was a guy exactly like this. Guy was having a bad episode, thought people were trying to kill him. He came into our yard. Fortunately, he was trying to get help to get away from the imaginary bad guys and didn't do anything threatening. The cops came and picked him up. I was back at my home country during a civil war. Some people started going to random villages and draft males and used them as soldiers. They eventually came to our house and took me a 12-year-old and my brother a 10-year-old. It was a few hours drive until we eventually reached a checkpoint where we would be stationed. Them being animals, one of the commanders took me and my brother to an abandoned building close to that checkpoint and then took off his gear and was trying to rape my brother. I was scared and in a panic I grabbed a decent-sized rock and hit him in the back of the head. Before he can do anything to my brother, he fell and I got on top of him and smashed his face over and over and over with the rock until it was caved in. Me and my brother then ran from that abandoned spot through some mountains and kept running until we reached a city nearby. We went to a nearby mosque, washed the blood off of us and told the sheikh in that area to help us, and that we were from said village. To our luck, he was a decent human being and returned us back to our village. A few years later we moved to the US. My brother killed himself 2 years ago and I am still in school. Neither me or my brother told anyone about what happened in that spot. All they know is that we escaped. I'm so sorry to hear about your brother. I hope you and your family find some semblance of peace. Thank you for sharing. One night I was walking home, pretty late, like 2 a.m. in the morning. I was 16 at that time and I happened to pass a bar. One drunk old dude said, "Hey, come here and buy me a beer." I started to walk faster and pretend I didn't hear "Hi, monsieur." Right after that he jumps on my back, trying to choke me. Managed to fall hard on my back. Unfortunately, when we fell he hit his head on the curb. I was with an abusive ex who would come home drunk every night. One night, we had a fight. I had my phone on vibrate and that obviously meant I was sleeping with other people. Behind his back. He left for a while and came home drunker than I'd ever seen. "Hi, monsieur." He wasn't making coherent sentences, but he lunged at me and wrapped his hands around my neck and sat on my chest. I thought I was going to die. I had done some BJJ when I was younger and managed to pull me legs up under his crotch, and then, with everything I had, I pushed him off me. He hit his head on the sharp corner of a table we had in the living room and went still. I figured he had been knocked out, so I went outside and called the police. I was gonna put his **** in jail. I had the deepest purple bruises in perfect fingerprint form around my neck. He would have gone to jail. I smoked a cigarette outside. Walked back in after I calmed my nerves just to make sure he wasn't awake and coming for me. He had a huge pool of blood under. "Hi, monsieur." It was almost black looking, so I stood there trying to figure out WTF I was looking at. Put 2 and 2 together and the rest is history. Years of therapy. Self-defense plea. Open and edit. Thanks for the awards, although I'm not so sure this deserved them, monsieur. To answer some questions really quickly, I was toxic and terrible in my early 20s, had some priors and I was taken into the police station. To say I was charged would probably be going too far. I wasn't, so I should have worded that better. I simply mean, everything was investigated. I did stay in a holding facility overnight. IDKY exactly. I live in a town that's less than 1 kppl, so it's not like a big city with big smart cops. His mom was in prison and his sister lived in Idaho, so I haven't spoken with either. I was asked to not attend THR funeral. I'm so far from a Brazilian jiu-jitsu master that it's insane. Had a very brief brush with it when my brother took it. I wasn't thinking when this assault occurred other than escape and survive. You'd be surprised what you can do when you have to in order to live. You did what you had to do, and this random internet stranger is proud of you. I hope you're feeling well these days. I second best of thoughts out to you, something that can never truly go away but can soften with time. Glad you are still with us. I woke up one night to my dog barking, which he never does. So I grabbed my pistol and went to check it out. When I looked out the front door I could see some motion by my truck and I heard some pounding. I opened the door and sidestepped tow ferry. I could see down my driveway and I saw someone punching my truck, so I asked what he was doing. He stopped and turned to me huffing and puffing and started saying things like, "She's a liar," and such, and I asked where he thought he was. He told me, and it was a street like 3 blocks away. I proceeded to tell him he was at the wrong house and that he needed to leave, but he refused and said he was at the right place, and then proceeded to approach me. I raised my gun and pointed at his chest. I was holding it in both hands, pointed at the ground directly in front of me the whole time, and told him he needed to leave and that he was at the wrong house. He didn't. He kept coming toward me, repeating what he said about someone being a liar. I told him again that he needed to leave, and he then told me he was invincible, which, with the way he was talking and acting, plus that told me he was high as a kite. As he was approaching, I was gradually backing up to my front door and eventually was backed up directly to it. He eventually got within arm's reach of my gun and made a swipe for it, so I jerked it back and then pushed back out and fired a shot right in the center of his chest. He didn't flinch, he didn't grimace, or anything to show that he was just shot. He then started coming at me again and I proceeded to shoot to him till he dropped. 6 shots total, all in the center of his chest. I moved a little and then stopped. After making sure he wasn't getting up, and I went inside, quickly told my wife I was okay, and called the cops and put on shorts as I went back outside. The cops showed up about 5 minutes later. I had put my gun down inside before, so I told him I was unarmed with my arms out and told him where the guy was. He detained me, and after about 6 hours and a couple interviews at the PD, I was released with 0 charges against me. Definitely not a fun night. I was in shorts the whole time and the PD was freezing cold. I couldn't even talk to my wife and make sure she knew I was okay, or even tell her what happened. I could hear the dude's girlfriend crying in another room before I asked to be moved. Asterisk 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 sad face and GT. I could hear the dude's girlfriend crying in another room before I asked to be moved. Talk about re-traumatizing for you both. Alright, this is gonna get buried, but whatever. Strap yourselves in because this is a ride of emotions. My dad is a security guard. He's very good at his job and has recently been asked to work in Japan for a music festival as a bodyguard of the artist organizing it. Back in 2016 he kicked a crackhead out of a concert for, you know, being jacked up on crack. The guy waited outside and followed my dad home after the concert. Being so asterisk 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 high, he obviously didn't think and just wanted revenge. When he got my address he left, but came back every so often, waiting for a time that none of us were home. He snuck into the crawl space of my roof and lived there for what was apparently 2 weeks before my parents and brother were out at my bro's soccer game. So I'm home alone and bored, and I hear some banging in the roof. I didn't know there was a dude up there at the time, obviously, so I opened up the roof to find out what it was. The second I opened it, he pounced on me. I kicked him off as soon as possible and ran down the hallway. He was a asterisk 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 of a lot faster than me, and as I realized this, the adrenaline finally kicked in and I decided to stay and fight. I turned around, just in time to see him pull out a knife and go for my back. I put out my hand and the knife went straight through. But I didn't feel it. The adrenaline was pumping. In a pure moment of fear, rage, and defense, I ripped my hand away, punched him with my left hand and ripped out the knife with my right. He ran at me again and I felt as if time slowed down. I held out the knife and happened to hit him in the throat. He suffocated about a minute later. I immediately called emergency services and 3 minutes later an ambulance and 2 cop cars showed up. The cops didn't arrest me as there was proof it was self-defense and that he was under the influence of cocaine, so I was free to go to the hospital. The knife had barely missed my bones, but it was too close for stitches, so I had to have my hand sort of glued together with a type of biodegradable, non-toxic superglue. I'll upload a picture of the scar to Imager and post a link within 10 minutes of making this comment. TLDR, Dad kicked out a crackhead from a concert, so he tracked down my family and tried to kill me. I won the fight to the death. Imager Reddit post link. Some guy tries to mug me in the street. He tells me to give him my wallet. I pulled my concealed carry and shot him in the leg and pelvis as I pulled up my gun. I grab his gun out of his hand and see the chamber. It was empty. That fucked me up for years. Edit. From some of the comments I see. I should point out the revolver was still in his waistband, with his hand on the grip, when I pulled my weapon. I'm sorry you had to go through that. However, he was pointing a firearm at you. Firearms usually have bullets in them, monsieur. It was justified. Treat every firearm as if it were loaded. That means if you're on the business end, expect bad business. When I was 12, I was taken on my walk home from school. I was gone a month. I was given very little food and almost no water at all. He told me that he was a friend of my grandmother, that she said he needed to watch me for a little, since my grandmother was going to be out of town. It turned out he was actually someone from my grandmother's past that had been stalking her for years and had even moved across country to follow her. The first day he locked me in a all-cement basement. Every time he left he would lock the door and push the dresser over it so I could not escape. I remember always thinking about how my grandmother could leave me with someone so evil. He would come home drunk and beat me and his son until we were bloody. On the 4th or 5th day I tried to run away, but unfortunately he got to me before I could escape. For my punishment, he tied me up to the back side of the house naked with a sock in my mouth and sprayed me with one of those really powerful hoses. Made my body red. I could hear his son begging him to stop and that I didn't mean to try and leave. On the 3rd week, he started to sexually assault us. I was raped 6 times while there. He had threatened to cut off the and balls of whoever tried to leave and make the other watch. I can say I don't get scared of almost anything ever, but in that moment I was the most terrified I had ever and will ever be. On Thursday of the 4th week he led me out to use the toilet. I remember feeling so weak. I lost so much weight and my skin color was going whiter the more days passed by. When he let me out I made a run for it up the stairs into the 2nd floor of the house. His son had ran up with me. I ran into a room and hid behind the closet door. His son ran to the balcony and was trying to figure out a way down safely. A moment later his father was in the room screaming at his son and all the horrible things he was going to do. He had thought I climbed down and ran. The man was talking about how they needed to get out of there, another thing I can't quite remember. He had his son in hand and was walking down the stairs. Everything went blank. I don't remember what happened exactly in this moment, but all I can remember is 1 second I was hiding behind the door and then it's like I blinked and I was pushing the man down the stairs. I pushed him down the stair. God, I hate remembering that I killed someone. He had cracked his neck. Even if it was self-defense, killing someone is one of the most horrific things in life. Knowing that someone who had dreams and thoughts, grew up with family and had been in love with someone before, just like you might have, or will just for you to take everything away and leave nothing but a rotting shell, is scaring. A lot of this was a big blank in my mind until my friend reminded me of a lot of things. When the cops came, his son and I were both starved, dehydrated, raped, black and amp, blue and white, and as my grandmother said, freezings to the touch. We both have scars on our bodies to this day, but his seem to be a lot less noticeable. It's sickening how much evil is in this word. Me and his son kept in contact after the events that transpired. Actually, we are best friends now and call and talk quite a bit. When I'm in Canada, I stay with him. A little after all of this happened, my grandmother moved us to the USA for some years. I will never forget what happened, but I will never feel bad for myself for what happened, because I know I only had to deal with it for a month. Who knows how long his son had to deal with all of that. This was a very traumatic experience for me. I had recently turned 18, graduated from high school, and started college. My college wasn't in the best part of town, but I ignored the warnings and didn't pay much attention to my surroundings. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and I was walking back to my dorm from a friend's dorm that was across campus. Everything was regular until I started hearing footsteps on the sidewalk behind me. When I looked back, no one was there, but it still put me on edge. I kept walking, but I kept hearing the footsteps. Every time I turned around, I couldn't see anyone, and I was starting to get scared. Finally, I turned around and saw a man walking further behind me. He was dressed in dark clothes and had strange gait. As soon as I saw him, he started running at me, and he was fast. I grabbed my pepper spray from my purse and sprayed it directly into his eyes. He yelled, but it didn't stop him for long, so I ran. I knew I could outrun him for a while because I was a state track runner all through high school. I could tell I was getting tired, but I didn't know what else to do. I was on the edge of the campus, and part of nudge right up to a dense forest. That's the part one was on. I couldn't see him, but I could hear his heavy footsteps as he tried to catch up to me. I saw a dead tree that was losing branches left and right. I picked a pretty big one and dragged it to the middle of the sidewalk. Then I took a good-sized one that was pretty heavy, but I could still lift it easily. With my branch in hand, I hid behind a tree. Soon after I saw him, he was still running fast, and coming right up on the branch. Just as I planned, he tripped, and I saw his shocked, sick face as he fell to the ground. I ran out from my tree and started pummeling him over the head with my branch. I saw blood, but I ran off. Once I got at my dorm, I took a second to catch my breath, and then I dialed 911. I explained to them what happened as the operator calmed me down and signaled for an ambulance and some police. I learned later that the man died en route to the hospital, but also that he had been mugging and beating young women for ages as they walked alone in the dark. The police knew what he was doing, but they could never figure out his identity. I had to go to therapy for ages, but I'm semi-okay now, and I never walk alone in the dark. You're a hero. Who knows how many other women you have potentially saved with your brave actions. Not defending myself, but a young woman hanging of a footbridge. A guy had dragged a young woman into a park in the early hours and tried to rape her a couple of times, but she had fought him off. Tried to run and hide in a park area she didn't really know in the dark. Got caught again. Fought him off again, and then finally got caught once more while approaching a footbridge. I was walking home, and by the time I had stumbled across them, he had tried to throw her off the bridge. She was desperately clinging to the side on the other side of the rail. At the time I felt nothing because our altercation took mere seconds to surprise him with some hits to sensitive areas on the back and head, throw him over, and pull her up. Over the next several months, coping with it was simply making sure she was okay and being there if she needed someone to talk to. She's okay, she met a nice fella and moved away. Long term, my feelings have always been he made the decision to hurt someone on his own. He lost the basic courtesy and respect all people deserve but still need to earn. It was not possible to rehabilitate him in that moment. I had more worries about the bugs I may have walked on while in the park. She was by far my main concern. We both lied a little when the police turned up. I didn't want to get charged because I got him from behind. The rules are different here in the UK compared to most posts I'm seeing here from North America. We found out much later he was suspected of raping or assaulting multiple women. I would do it again if needed, although maybe I would chat less to random strangers at the train station about silly things before walking home so that I would have arrived at the park earlier and maybe stopped the whole terrible ordeal happening to her in the first place. Some people are just born to be asterisk 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 asterisk. And GT, some people are just born to be asterisk 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 asterisk. That there. When I was 13, I was babysitting my younger brother. Parents were out having a dinner date. At the time my family lived on a dirt road, away from the city. Quiet place. So my parents didn't think much of leaving me alone with my 9-year-old little brother for an hour or two. I was putting him to bed when I heard a knock on the door. This knock was loud and he banged several times before stopping for a moment. Then I heard glass shatter. I immediately grabbed my .22 long rifle my parents got for me and hid in my little brother's room behind his bed with rifle mounted at the door. Told him to hide under the bed and make no noise whatsoever no matter what happens. I had forgotten about my cell phone on the kitchen table halfway across the house. I remember thinking to myself to protect my little brother at any cost. I heard a lot of noises coming from inside my house, first in the kitchen, then living room, then my room, then finally the hallway to my little brother's room. As the door opened I seen a unfamiliar guy. He quickly seen me then rushed me. As there was a good 5 to 10 steps from the door to my brother's bed I fired all the rounds in my rifle. I just remember him dropping on the floor with a loud thud, my brother crying, and a lot of blood. I called my parents, after which they called the police. After talking with my parents, they told me the police said that the guy was our next door neighbor and a registered asterisk 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 offender. Most likely was staking out the house and he noticed we were home but our parents weren't. Honestly, it hasn't affected me as an adult. I did what had to be done, and I don't regret anything. Needless to say, any future dinner dates my parents had back then they brought us along, which was nice. I was heading home when I was attacked by 2 guys. They followed me when I got off the metro. My first memory of the attack is being on the ground and getting kicked in the head and ribs over and over. I was disoriented and it took me a few moments to realize what was happening and that I was being robbed. All that was going through my mind was don't resist. Don't fight back. Let them hit you and take your backpack, you can get another one. All the stuff your parents and movies teach you. The guy hitting me had one of those metal collapsible batons. The other was just watching from 10 feet away. The beating stopped where the guy with the baton tried to take my boots. I made eye contact with the other guy and at that moment he said, asterisk 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 it, and pulled out a knife. I decided to fight back. The rest is a blur. I remember a few details but I have no idea what order they happened in. I remember booting the guy closest to me in the face and getting on top of "Hi monsieur." I managed to get the baton away and started hitting him with it. I went for the head till they put their arms up, then to the body until they put their arms down. Back and forward until the one guy went down, then back to the other guy till he went down, then back to the other as he got back up. Next thing I remember was waiting for the cops to get there. Some people close by had called them and were waiting with me. I don't remember feeling myself being stabbed or cut in any way until the people waiting with me pointed it out. There was a small part of my intestine bulging out and I had some major lacerations on my arms, neck, and shoulder. over 60 stitches and a major concussion, but I was out of the hospital the next morning. To shorten the story a bit, the end result was one of them died and the other was arrested and spent a few months in the hospital before prison. The lack of any guilt over the situation is what truly was the most troubling. Everyone kept asking me how I was doing mentally. No one believed me when I told him I felt fine. Someone before me on here out at best feeling guilty for not feeling guilty. I have a feeling many of the others on here can agree with me on what it was like after. Coffee tasted amazing, the air smelled fresh and clean, the grass couldn't be any greener. My entire outlook on life had changed and I suddenly couldn't care less about any of the trivial stresses I used to care about. Am I the only one, or do others share in my disposition? I was a door gunner in Iraq for a Hello Squadron. Our main mission was casualty evacuation. 99% of the time we didn't fire weapons. Either we didn't take fire or those shooting at us were too far away to actually hit us. Point being, we typically were not shooting at anyone. One mission I happened to be on involved grunts taking fire. We were nearby and they radioed us for cover fire. From the air it was just shooting a green patch on the ground. However, after the fight we provided the evacuation support for the wounded. One of the wounded was an enemy combatant that couldn't have been older than 16. Maybe, yet there isn't a day that goes by that the image of him doesn't flash into my thoughts.